know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?
Peace, family. Peace, peace, peace. Oh, so nice to see, well, to hear you guys. Well, actually to read you guys, since I can't see anybody. I am so excited to sit down with these two HAPI cast members because they are not only dynamic, super smart, but they're going to give us some really good basic knowledge, because this financial situation that's going on, we really have to know what's going on. So before we get started, I'm just going to give everyone some time to come into the room. I see we have we have some repeaters. We have James Tyler. We have Robbie, Nucleus. Okay, peace to everybody. Now, if you guys are not subscribed to our newsletter, the HAPI newsletter, okay, right there, head over to hapifilm.com, okay? And when you're there, there's a lot of stuff you can do. Number one, you're going to first hit the button that says get connected. And that way you will get connected. We'll get your email address. And that way, whenever we have anything going on, we have just anything, you'll be the first to know, because you'll be on our newsletter list. And like right now, we're getting ready to, unveil some new things at HAPI. So we are having a clearance sale of all of our merchandise. Okay. It is priced to go. So this is the time, like if you were just like, oh, it's too high or whatever, this is the time, just head over to HapiFilm. And if you are watching today, when you actually purchase anything, in our store, we have a little something that we're going to put in the bag for you. So make sure, you head over to that hapifilm.com and get it started. So you can get the little thing we're going to put in there for you. All right. Peace to Sharon. It's nice to see some of our longtime subscribers, giving us a shout out here. We are super excited. Now, we've been talking about this. Taiki has been on the last couple of HAPI Talks talking about this. We are headed to Egypt. Okay. Now, let me tell you about this trip. ACAT Tours has been going to Egypt for about 25 years. Okay. That's a long time taking Black folks to Egypt. And, we're really excited about this particular tour, because we're going to discover the origins of economics in Egypt. So we're going to walk in the same footsteps, of people who actually not only develop the constructs of the economy the way we know now, but all of the information is right there for us to see. And so coming on this trip with us, not only are you going to be able to see all these beautiful, the temples and the pyramids, and we're going to sail up the Nile, all of those things, but we also are going to have Dr. Georgina Falou. She's going to be there. She's going to be giving some economic classes. We have Dr. David Anderson that's going to be in the house, and he's going to be, giving us, a few economic classes. And we also have Jamar Milton, who will be performing there. And we have a HAPI gala that's going to be happening. So this is like the place to be. Not only will you get to, rub shoulders with everybody that's going, but you'll really get to see Egypt in a fun way, but also in a historical and in an educational way. We have Infodishi Juhutimis. Everyone knows Infodishi. He's going to be one of our tour guides. So this is going to be a packed 10 days. All right. We're leaving out at JFK. It's going to be a very good trip. But, I just can't, the other piece is that with our guest tonight, we're going to, talk about economics, but I cannot just say this enough in terms of the economic awareness that you will get being on this trip. And so a lot of times, as Black folks, we're like, oh, we invented everything. We do things a certain way, but we don't know why. This trip is going to tell you why. It's going to explain why. You'll see why. You'll feel why. So this is the time. And, with Dr. Georgina Falou, I would just say, shout out to Dr. Falou. She is about business. She wants people who are coming to contact her early because she's like, everyone needs to start a business. So this is the type of energy that we're going to have on this trip. So it's super important, family. You have 7 months to pay. Because I'm not trying to get anybody's pocketbook. Okay. I know that this is not something you just, swipe and you're there. But, really think about what your spirit needs and what your mind needs, and just head over to acadtours.com and check out this event. This is going to be pretty epic. I'm super excited about it. Taki's super excited about it. Everyone that we've been interviewing is super excited about this trip. So please, family, if you can, head over to acadtours.com and it's $300. You can get your deposit in and save your seat, because once we sell out of the rooms on the ship, then that's it. We can't, we're not going to bring any more people. So it's super important, because right now we looking like we got maybe a third left. So if you want to go on this trip, or if you just think you want to go on this trip, go head over to acadtours.com, put down your deposit, and then let's make it happen. All right. So without further ado, okay, since I get rid of this here banner, I'm going to introduce two other HAPI cast members. Now, if you guys have not seen HAPI, I don't know who hasn't seen HAPI, but everyone at this point should have seen HAPI, the HAPI film. It's the role of economics in the development of civilization. Okay. And in this film, we have Dr. Julianne Malveaux and we have Kenneth Kelly. So without further ado, here they are. Hey, Dr. Malveaux.
Hello.
Hey. So I'm just going to tell two short stories about each of you guys, and then we're going to get started. So Dr. Malveaux, about maybe, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking about like different guests for the HAPI show. So I just went into chat. Okay. And I typed in African-American, top-notch economist. And guess who was number one? Dr. Julianne Malveaux. I was like, oh my God. I was like, so I called her and left this message like, you're on ChatGPT. They know about you. AI knows about you. And Ken Kelly. So we were almost finished shooting HAPI, and we needed a banker. And so Takia sent me a picture of this woman banker in Detroit and was like, oh, we need to get her. You're from Detroit. And I was like, yeah, I'm from Detroit. That doesn't actually mean I know everybody in Detroit, but let's see what we can do. So we, long story short, we end up, meeting Mr. Kelly. And it had to be like a Monday. He's like, what you doing on Wednesday? I was like, well, looks like we're coming to Detroit to shoot you. And I tell you, between 3 days, like 4 days, one day me calling him, we set it up and we were out there shooting him, and it was like one take, Mr. Kelly, like maybe 2 hours and we were done. And you have to see him in this film. It's great.
You're
so I just wanna, so I'm so excited to be sitting down talking with you guys.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely.
Yay. All right. So tonight's show features two of like I said, the most brilliant scholars in the world of economics. Both Dr. Julianne Malveaux and Kenneth Kelly are cast members in the award-winning documentary film HAPI. And we brought them here tonight to not only educate, but to dispel myths and help us navigate through financial roadblocks. Okay. So we're going to learn some stuff today. All right. We're going to be inspired, but we're also going to learn some things. So let's start with you, Dr. Malveaux. In HAPI, you said that Black people see economics like kids looking at a candy through the window at a candy store. And actually, if you guys go to the film, it's at 1 hour and 41 minutes is when she says this. Okay. It's there, but distant from us. But with that, I'm sorry. But with that, you felt it was your job to let us know that we've always been economic actors. So what is an economic actor?
Economic actors are people who participate in the economic system, and we've done that forever. I mean, our first economic act, quite frankly, in this country is what some people call self-emancipation, and I just call the runaway slave phenomenon. I mean, that is an economic act. You took yourself away from massa and chose to liberate yourself to massa's economic detriment. So, we have always been economic actors. And even when we were enslaved, I mean, our contribution to this economy is extremely significant that people don't want to pay attention to. There would not be a United States were it not for enslaved people. And I think we need to be very clear about that. The African American presence and the weakness of the Southern economy is responsible for the development of the bond system. Basically, people use their enslaved human beings as collateral when they borrowed money. So again, we've always been economic actors, but during enslavement, we were entrepreneurs. Many Black women, enslaved women, on their Sundays or Saturdays, often hired themselves out to wash or clean for white people who didn't have slaves. Black men who were blacksmiths and had other skilled crafts. They were also entrepreneurs. And of course, when we talk about their entrepreneurship, we have to also talk about the chicanery of masters and white people. When I think about Free Frank McWhorter. He was an enslaved man who basically attempted to purchase himself, cut a deal with massa. He was doing work on the side, and he said, if I give you $1, I don't remember the term, but $1 a week, let's say, can I be free in so many years? And they said yes. Well, two things happened. First of all, who believes massa? How can you really believe massa in a situation like that? But secondly, Free Frank, as he would walk to his side job, met a sister, and of course, young people being young people, they became with child. So now he had to not only buy himself, but his wife and his child. But before it was all over with, he had purchased more than a dozen of his relatives. I mean, he just continued, and his commitment. People want to say that Black men are not committed to the Black family. Well, that's family commitment. He could have bought himself and left the sister enslaved. No, he bought his family. So again, that's an economic actor. But when I talk to friends or colleagues about the economy, first of all, it is not cute to say that you don't know anything about the economy. I don't know anything about that. I mean, someone actually rolled up on me at an event and said, oh, yeah, no, I've always admired you because I flunked econ undergrad. I said, that was information that I really didn't need. Why would you share that with somebody? It did not endear you to me. That's sharing, that you're just telling me that you're ignorant. But a lot of us just feel like, we don't understand it. I mean, we're going to talk about the Fed today, and I know my brother Banker has a lot more to say about this whole crooked banking system than I do. But we know that there are all these economic organizations that we don't know a lot about. We're just getting 2 African Americans on the Fed, which we're very excited about. And of course, the first African American on the Fed was Dr. Andrew Brimmer, who was an amazing brother, very conservative but really good people. And he did a lot of work on Black banking, about the efficacy of Black banking, about why we needed more Black banks. So it's important for us to know about these people. I would direct you, Felicia, and I guess I'm going to have to get in touch with you all about, because we re-released my book, Surviving and Thriving, and the subtitle is 365 Facts in Black Economic History.
Oh.
We did a second edition with Roland Martin doing the foreword. And so we want to get it out there because these are facts that we should know. We should know about Sadie Alexander, the first Black woman to get a PhD. She was one of the first 3. There are 3 Black women who got a PhD in the same weekend in June of 1921. And she was the economist of the group. And so, of course, I see her as my shero personally, especially when I hear some of her stories about the things that happened to her as she studied economics at the University of Pennsylvania, where, the devil was very busy. But in any case, there are things we don't know that we should know. We don't know a lot, and we must, about economic envy. Most people think that most lynchings occurred because Black men were sleeping with white women. No, most lynchings occurred because Black people had too much money. When we had too much money, people rose up against us in many ways. I'll just tell you one story because I'm talking too long and I want to hear from my brother. But I will just tell you the story of Anthony Crawford was a black man who owned what they said was 425 acres of, quote, good cotton land. This was back again in the 1890s, like in the 1920s. Well, the newspaper described him as what did they say? They said he was a wealthy Negro and arrogant. So one day he went to the store to sell some of his cottonseed. A white man who was in front of him was offered a price for his cottonseed, and Mr. Crawford was offered 5 cents a pound less. What he said was, I'd rather throw my damn cottonseed in the river than sell it to you. Well, now there was a law that said you could not curse at white people. Well, he didn't curse at the white man. He didn't call him a peckerwood, a damn peckerwood. What he said was, I'd rather he cursed at his own cottonseed. Well, they came to arrest him. But as I said, he was a wealthy Negro and arrogant. He asked how much the bail was. They said $15. He reached in his pocket and gave him the $15. Well, they lynched him anyway and let his body hang until it decomposed. More significantly, 2 white men who were his economic competitors were appointed the executor of his estate. And his family, wife, children, were given 30 days to get off of his property. And that property today would be worth over $10 million. So when we talk about a wealth gap, we have to talk about the wealth gap is not because black people are deficient. The wealth gap is a function of white folk chicanery, of economic envy. If we had 2 cents, they wanted that. So we just have to be dealing with that. So that's why when I talk about our nose to the candy store, if we choose not to be economically informed, we choose to stand outside of a system that will oppress us anyway, but forewarned is forearmed. Don't do it, y'all. Don't do it.
Damn. You know what? Last time you were on with Takechi, am I saying her name correctly? The lawyer, and you guys said some stories that I was like I had never heard before. Some lynching stories around a young woman in a grocery store, and gosh, I mean that's crazy. Yeah,
this is what our people have had to deal with, and this is what our young people need to understand. They need to understand this history. They need to understand, the history of Maggie Lena Walker, who I know my brother Banker could talk about. Maggie Lena Walker was the first Black woman to start a bank. And that bank lasted from 1903 until 2005, almost 100 years.
Wow.
More than 100 years, actually. It finally went out of business because of changes in banking regulations, but this system was bad. And she gave a speech once and she said, we can have our own banks. We can collect our own interest. That's what we need to do.
That's what we need to do.
Well stated.
Yeah. So you know what? In fact, this actually kind of brings me to my next question. So specifically as it relates to the Black community, okay, what are the signs of wealth creation? Is it like a bank account? Is it having a good credit score? Is it having a house? And we'll start with you, Mr. Kelly.
Well, great being here with you, Dr. Malveaux again, and Felicia, thanks for having me. I would tell you it's always enlightening to be with Dr. Malveaux. You'll learn something just by sitting there and listening and opening the ears. So I appreciate you and what you do. Let me start off with a couple of definitions as we opened up. And when you think about wealth really means the opportunity to maybe not have to work for your money, meaning your money is working for you. When you think about rich, you're thinking about income, meaning what do I physically do, or whatever it may be, an architect or doctor. My presence is required for me to generate that income, which in some cases we think of as a high income, meaning we're rich, and we also connotatively say we're wealthy. Well, wealth means you can sit at home and sleep and your, let's say your riches increase. So just getting down to the basics, thinking about assets, liabilities, debt and equity. And I hope I'm not throwing these at you too fast to try to sound confusing at all, but I'm trying to make a basic principle point. And it goes back to what Dr. Malveaux was just saying a moment ago. When you show up to work and physically need to be there, you're creating an income. But really where you want to be long term, and I'm just saying long term, it doesn't matter what economic class you're in, we can all create what I call wealth. And that could be the $50,000 house down the street that pays you rental income into perpetuity for your family to possibly or send someone to college. So I want to use those terms very uniquely so that we don't get caught up in what's the wealth gap. It is very true what Dr. Malveaux has just stated, which is we have been from the origination of coming here on the ships, and then aspiring to acquire our own wealth. We've had a lot taken away from us. Those are facts. It is not, it's indisputable. Let me just put it that way, very plain and clear. But what we do know is, back to the comment of looking through the window, is sometimes we take ourselves out of the game and just watch the game and then make the statement of, well, it's the man against me. Yeah. Being on the conversations like the ones we're having tonight is the way to get put into the game. Understanding the basic rules of engagement, understanding how do you go about moving from as all of us probably have, a minimum income job, minimum wage job, into moving upward into the socioeconomic ladder. And so during that process, we have to make decisions. Are you going to be just a consumer or a provider? And how do you ensure that you're taking care of your family? Hence, we use sometimes the term wealth, when in reality, we're meaning the term income, meaning rich. Mm-hmm. And so there are a lot of things that we ought to be doing and thinking about. How do we change that? For instance, the reality is each of us are working and we produce an income. What are you doing to protect that income? If you so happen to have a stroke, car accident tomorrow, is there a life insurance policy there in place to cover you so that those who are left behind can, quote, have some sense of wealth or riches, the way I defined it earlier? The point I'm making is that we need to become a little bit more astute as a culture on these topics. When I watch kids go out and buy $250 sneakers, I'm concerned, because our value system is working counter to what so many of our ancestors have tried to provide us. And so as a banker, looking at it from my perspective, Dr. Malveaux, I would tell you, I'm not sure the system is crooked. It certainly hasn't worked for us. And part of what I've tried to do every day is to be sure we are as exposed as we can be to all of the rules, all of the regulations, so we can make it work better for us. Let me put it in terms of one of my buddies, John Hope Bryant. John says it best, and it's something I hope all of us can really identify with. He says, anytime that African Americans can understand the rules of the game, we excel. We've seen it more oftenly in athletics, whether it's football, etc. There's a defined set of rules. We know what the rules are. We go and physically figure out how to play to those rules. Business is a little bit more obscure than that, in that sometimes you got to find the person who knows the rules so you can play by those rules. And so oftentimes, because of that lack of relationships, lack of engagement, lack of understanding why people lobby on the Hill to get rules in their favor, sometimes we come up short because we don't understand those rules. And so what I would say is, when we see things are not working out for us, we ought to be figuring out, how do we get a lot more engaged and understand why someone is purporting for rules that we don't like, or the ones we don't like, in a manner that will allow us to understand those rules and apply them to business.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Malveaux, did you want to add on to this?
Well, not really. I would say one quick thing. The great philosopher Lauryn Hill once said, "It's not what you cop, it's what you keep." Yeah. I think it's important when we think about money. A lot of people think they're wealthy because they make six figures, but if they also owe six figures, it doesn't matter. And you raised a couple questions at the beginning. I mean, we do have to be far more mindful. One of the things that we haven't spent enough time talking about is credit score discrimination.
Oh my God.
Some folks, some of our young people, see, first of all, these credit card companies, and my banker brother, I'm going to tell you, I think the system is rigged. I think it's crooked. And I think that ignorance, people exploit people's ignorance, but they also exploit essentially our blackness. But, I mean, I got in trouble years ago when I was president of Bennett College because I banned credit card companies from my campus. Why did I ban credit card companies on campus? Because these children did not have any business with credit cards. Now, I was told that was patronizing to say that, but your whole brain has not developed until you're 25 years old. Before that, you're dealing with a portion of a brain. And you get poor impulse control. Someone sends you a card in the mail, says you have a $2,000 limit. Some of these young people interpret that as, I have $2,000. They don't look at the interest rate. It is probably 25% or more.
That's correct.
They didn't look at anything. They said, "Oh, I got $2,000." And further down the line, with a poor credit score, there are a number of industries they will not be employed in. They will not be employed in banking. They will not be employed on Wall Street. They will not. So they need to we need to make sure that they understand credit card companies see them as a profit opportunity. They're making profits. Anytime you're paying 25% interest, they're making profits.
Absolutely.
But we come our consumerism, and I understand our consumerism, and part of it is a cultural function of our marginalization.
Yes, I agree with that.
People feel like they haven't had, they can't. I have a friend, she's not a friend, she's a friend of a friend, who used to receive public assistance, but she would not drink or eat a store brand. She wanted to have the best. So she would not do a generic whatever. She had to have Del Monte or whatever was the best because she believed she deserved the best. But I told her, you ain't got the best money.
Yep. You have beer money. You have champagne taste on beer money.
Well, we just have to make sure that constantly we're beating the drum of financial literacy and letting not only our young people, but our not so young people. We now have seniors who are getting these credit cards and they're on their Social Security not doing very well. So we have to be the ones to share that information. But in addition, and I mean, this happens. And John Hope Bryan is a mutual friend, Brother Kelly. So, but I mean, this should be happening in our churches.
Yes.
It should be happening in our sororities and fraternities.
Yes.
It should be happening, and we should be having Saturday schools and Saturday workshops. We need to make sure that our people are informed. Like I said, even if we are fully informed, the system is still crooked. I am a classically trained economist. They didn't send me to Marxist school. I went to MIT.
Right.
Watching this economy taught me Marxism, taught me socialism, taught me ROI. So watching what's happened to our people, it taught me all that stuff. I started out basically mainstream. No, I didn't. I'm not going to tell that lie. I was about to tell a lie, but I'm like, no, that ain't really quite the truth. But anyway.
I had to just keep my mainstream when you said mainstream.
Well, I hear you loud and clear. And what we're doing today is really dispelling some of those myths, those rules of the game, like you just described, Dr. Malveaux. I think, I probably thought I was as financially literate as I need to be in college too, but I had a card. I still have that card, my Discover card. And I can tell you of one purchase that I know I made in my my mental growing stage. Let me put it that way, which was not wise. But to your point, it's happening to us as a culture. But what we need to do is talk about these rules of the game. And to your point, credit scores are so important. And I wish if it was my, I'll say legacy to us as a people, it would be that all of us have the same level of respect for our credit score as we have for someone stepping on our Air Force Ones. And when I say that, I mean, we'll get into a fight over that, right? But we can walk around with a 620 credit score and wearing a Gucci bag. I mean, or carrying a Gucci bag. It just doesn't make sense. And the point I'm making is understanding these rules of how your credit score can really marginalize you and cost you more money over the long haul. For instance, when you go to buy a house, if your credit score is at a certain level, you're going to pay a higher interest rate. Now you multiply that times a 30-year mortgage or a 15-year mortgage. It is extremely expensive not to understand these rules of the game. And so your point is well taken, but I would certainly, counter. We have to have these conversations. It's one of the reasons I'm here at 7:00 on a Sunday evening, because I believe every time we throw one of those starfish back in the water, hopefully there will be a ripple that will impact someone in a positive way.
Yeah. And I was going to just add, now it's the credit cards, but now they have these after payments and Klarna and Affirm, where you can now mortgage anything. You can buy something for $35 and hit the button and they'll give you 4 easy payments of it.
Oh yeah.
And so, my kids are like, oh yeah. I was like, but mommy, they're like, oh, I only have to pay $4.99. No, like if so it's like, this is like the new kind of credit card.
Well, these are derivatives of what they did back to, I think, what Dr. Malveaux was describing as crooked. This is the way they used to get us on cars, right? Oh, $99 a month. And they didn't tell you how many months, but you realize, oh, I have $99. I can make that payment. And the reality is you buy that car sometimes twice over. And to your point, Felicia, you see it, I think, even on Amazon now. You can buy something for $50 and they're going to ask you, do you want to break it up into 4 payments? And for some, that might sound smart, but if you're putting it on a card and then multiplying that times 20+% interest, I mean, you're going to buy whatever that item is many times over. And so those are the things we have to talk more about and be sure that people understand. And I get it. I've been there. I still carry my paychecks from when I was a student and working as an RA and also on work study, just to remind me that $30 a week was a big deal to me at one point in time in my life. And the point I'm saying is it's about relevance and understanding context. And even it doesn't matter if you make $30,000 a year or $300,000 a year. We've seen some of the same principles across that whole spectrum, which means you're not understanding the rules of engagement. And guess what? You end up paying more over the long haul.
Yeah, no
And
doubt.
the thing about it is we encourage people, and we should, we encourage people to take on debt to buy a home.
Right.
We sometimes encourage, although that's a mixed bag, people to take on debt to purchase an automobile. But when people are being encouraged to take on debt to buy a shirt,
right,
or to buy food. I mean, some of our young people in the dormitories, I had a little sister who we were talking on the phone, and she said, well, I'm about to call and get myself a pizza. And I said, how you paying for it? Because I know a business. So I said, how you paying for it? My credit card. I said, so you get ready to pay interest on pizza. I said, you got any crackers in your house? She said, yeah. I said, get some crackers, put some peanut butter on them, and keep it moving. But seriously, you're paying interest on pantyhose. It's not worth it. And when you look at it, this is how the banks are making money. And we can't blame the banks so much. I blame them some because of this, just the proliferation of credit cards. Of course, COVID put a stop to some of that. But I don't blame the banks as much as I do blame the banks. But I also blame individuals who live beyond their means and who choose to use their credit cards to subsidize a lifestyle. There are reasons to use credit cards. I don't want to see people walking around the street with all that cash. So you pay, you charge what you need to. Right. But you basically do need to look at what does this mean in terms of how I'm going to pay this money back.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. So let me just take a little quick break. Thank you. I saw Zakia Hill come up, so I said I want to say thank you. Thank you for the super chat, family. Please, you can hit $ hapifilm and donate to our program, and not only this program, okay. But we do HAPI Talks, but we do a lot of other things, and everything that we use, we are keeping our Black dollar within our family, in terms of our community. And I think it's Ken Kelly that says on HAPI, that the Black dollar stays in the community for 6 hours. So so we try to, so we listen, we are very appreciative, but we really try to keep our money in, within our scope. Everything that we do, our graphic artists, everything, we keep it, in the family. So thank you, thank you for anybody that wants to contribute. We had the super chat on YouTube. You can buy, I think it's stars on Facebook, and or you can hit us up on the Cash App. So thank you, Zakia. Yep, and Ronnie too. Okay, and so you guys kind of alluded to this, but my next question is, in your opinion, can your social circle impact or influence your economic mobility?
It depends on your social circle. Mm-hmm. But I think that, yes. Birds of a feather flock together. So, people who are goal-oriented, like-minded, Afrocentric, supporting Black people, they hang out with folks who basically feel the same way. And folks who just believe that, it's nothing but a party, they tend to hang out with folks who believe it's nothing but a party. I think that, but it's an interesting question, Felicia, because I don't ever want people to think they have to exclude people from their circle because they're not economically stable, because all of us have had a time when we weren't. So
exactly.
I always tell people that 3 things about your social circle or your circle. Number 1, you should have friends of every age. Most of us hang in our peer group, but you should have friends of every age. And I'll tell you, a 90-year-old white woman told me that years ago, and one of her best friends was a teenager. She was 90, but she said she learned so much about what young people were thinking and trends from having a relationship with this young child. And so I always think about that when I think about people that I want to hang out with. Sometimes I want to hang out with my girls or my line sisters or something like that. But sometimes I'll go chop it up with a student, you know, get a few minutes, because we have to be broad and not narrow. So that's number one about yourself. Number two, you should have people in your circle who are of different economic circumstances, so that you understand some of the challenges that so many people are facing. I mean, people who make public policy don't often understand public policy. So when you see people talk about a cashless society, in order to live in a cashless society, you have to have internet access and credit cards. We just talked about that. There are some who would not be able to survive in a cashless society. The third thing I always say about your circle is you always have to know people who are smarter than you. I mean, it takes no effort to know people who are dumber than you, because they're all over the place. But you have to really make an effort and have the humility to know people who are smarter than you, and to be willing to sit at their knee and say, you know, what can you tell me about this? So that's what I think about our circles.
Yeah.
Those, that's so well said. And I don't know that there's a whole lot I can add to that, but we do have to be broad and wide. And I would tell you too, there's nothing that gets you closer to having a social circle than reading a book. One of my favorites is Reginald Lewis, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun?
Yes.
And I would highly encourage anyone who has aspirations to read it, not because he became who he became, but you learn so many lessons along the way. And so I applied some of those lessons that Reggie demonstrated in his book in my life. And I would tell anyone, always feel free, even if you're, quote, in the projects and feel like there's no one close to you and you only see the extension of the world when you go to school. That's not true, especially in today's society. You have access to things that many of us had to have the World Encyclopedia book to reach many years ago. And so the point I'm making is that don't let physical space keep you from reaching the social spheres that you need to reach in the way people think and what they aspire to be. And that's what I heard Dr. Malveaux just describe from a physical perspective, but I also want to add that mental aspect of it, even through reading.
I'm glad you raised reading, because, you know, with all the electronics, people's attention spans have shrunk, so that people do not read a whole article in the newspaper. They'll read the headlines, or, you know, they get their news from wherever, MSNBC, Fox, CNN. And, you know, I've been on all of them, and that's not a big deal. But why don't you read the newspaper yourself, as opposed to having someone else digest the headlines for you? So then you could raise questions about what you're reading and what you're thinking. I think that it's really important to talk about literacy. And we've been talking about financial literacy, but we really also just have to talk about plain old literacy. And I ask people all the time, what's the last thing you read that intrigued you? And if someone can't answer the question, I really don't want to talk to them that long. Because if you're not intellectually curious, you know, then you're stuck.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. Oh God, yes. Yes. Yeah, you know what, right when you said that, I was specifically thinking about, I was having a conversation with someone, and you know, and I was like, oh, and I was talking about this book, The Untethered Soul, Michael Singletary. And the person just looked me dead in the face, was like, yeah, I don't really read. I was like, oh.
They said that? I
was like, wait.
I wouldn't tell anybody that I didn't read.
You know,
I would think that to myself.
I know, but you know, so then I was like, wait, let me get some clarifying questions, because maybe this person was like, well, no, I don't read, like, physical books. Maybe I just read them online. No, he was like, I don't. He's like, oh, I don't read. He's like, a lot of people lie up in books. Okay, yeah, grand opening, grand closing. Keep it moving. Yeah, exactly.
Put them on your prayer list and keep on walking.
Yes. So we're going to kind of, I don't know if we're switching gears, but we want to talk about the Federal Reserve. So it said that the Federal Reserve plans to increase interest rates by 0.25% later this year, which would bring it to the highest level since 2001. The question is, how does this increase or decrease of the federal interest rates affect the economy just in general?
So I'll jump in on these. The Federal Reserve real intent is trying to manage monetary policy for the country. They also part of that includes looking at managing inflation. Some of that is trying to also manage the strength of the dollar on the world stage. If you're holding US dollars and they're not as valuable as they used to be, the Fed has to take all of that data into account: unemployment, inflation rate, et cetera. And so where they are right now, and again, many of us probably saw about a year plus ago, inflation was about 9-ish%. They've been able to bring that back down to about right at 4 right now. And so they're still moving because a target worldwide is about 2%. And so they're still moving. They had a pause in June. They didn't raise in June. They just raised this past week, 25 basis points. I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to raise it just a little bit again to try to get that inflation rate down towards the 2%. I'll tell you, my personal concern right now is that the movement and the rate of increase has been so swift that we haven't had a chance to really see what the long-term impact is going to be. And so we saw a little bit of banking turbulence back in March with Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. Some of their challenges were unique to them. They had some very idiosyncratic business models. But the reality is, if rates continue to move at the same rate for even an equal period of time, we could see that cause some more harm in the system. And that's a concern that I personally have as a banker. But their intent, I think, is good. But at the end of the day, we got to be sure that we manage all of those things under circumstances that we understand. And for instance, we have a labor crisis in this country. The challenges we face because of ill immigration policy, the border over the wall mantras, et cetera, is causing us challenges. And if you don't believe me, go try to hire someone to remodel your house or to do plumbing, et cetera. You can't find the labor to get that type work done. And if you do, you're going to pay a rate that's probably higher than you anticipate. And the point I'm making is that some of those back to policies have caused some of the challenges that we're facing that they're trying to correct through monetary policy. And I'm a firm believer at this point that the metrics of old don't work in today's environment. So you've got to be a little bit more innovative in thinking of what you're trying to accomplish and be sure that you get there the right way without causing any unintended consequences. So that's a little bit of where we are. Now, the reality of back to the individual consumer, which I think you're also asking, Felicia, is that guess what? It's going to cost you more to buy that car. It's going to cost you more to put that purse on a credit card or those pair of boots or gun on a credit card. It's going to cost you more to buy a house. You could have gotten 2 years ago this time, you could have gotten 2% money to buy a house if you had excellent credit. Right now, you're probably looking at on average about 7%. Yep. Okay, put that in a calculator, mortgage calculator, and see the difference that you're paying in interest. It could be almost, in some cases, well over 100% more in just the interest payment alone. And so the point that I'm making is that it's going to have an impact on all of us and probably for a sustained period of time. We need to understand that because making that payment you used to make doesn't get you the same value. But what I also know, and I think you asked this earlier, Felicia, when you think about the dollar, it is the rock solid of, the world economy. Still, 60% of the world relies on the US dollar. I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon. China is a budding, I'll call it, economy. They're trying to create a lot of influence on a country or a continent that we all care about, Africa, which has a lot of natural resources. But for today and for the short haul, I would tell you from our political military might and our economic might, the dollar is going to be there for a while. And there will be some who will talk about it toppling. I just don't see that happening in the near future.
Yeah,
well, I don't think that the dollar is going to topple. But I certainly think, I travel internationally extensively. I just came back from Zambia. And I remember a time, and it wasn't that long ago, wherever you were in the world, people would accept your dollars. People were eager to get a dollar for a tip as opposed to whatever their own currency was. People want their currency. I think in order to get to Zambia, it takes forever, but you should still go. It takes forever, and you leave the U.S., you go to Dubai, where there's a currency, and then you go to Lusaka, where there's another currency. And what I found in Dubai and in Lusaka, people did not want my dollars. They wanted the local currency. De-dollarization is happening. The United States has bungled our economy and our politics so badly, partially because of the influence of the orange man, and partially COVID basically changed everybody's perspectives. We have to look at the economic rules, and I think Brother Kelly is absolutely right. Look at the economic rules very different because they're different. I mean, economists, we grew up on this notion of a Phillips curve, that, unemployment and inflation were adversely connected. No more. I mean, we see inflation and we see solid employment. Although I will say to you, Ken, that if people want somebody to remodel their house, pay them. I mean, we are on the cusp of a world, not a world, but certainly a United States labor revolution. Writers on strike. We just averted a UPS strike. Actors on strike because we're not paying people enough. But they want to pay actors $184 to purchase their image through AI, and then to be able to use it in perpetuity. Now, these are people who used to make I don't know how many $1 million, with their acting. Now they're saying, I'm gonna give you $184, and then I can use your likeness in any kind of way. And with the AI, it's very, very sophisticated. That's kind of a side note, but it's not a side note because we're living in a world that is changing so rapidly that very few of us have kept up with what the changes have been, and so many of us are accustomed to looking at the way we used to look at it. Correct. So you talk to people about employment, for example. I just did a little webinar with about 4 corporate CEOs who wanted to pick my brain, and they were talking about they couldn't find workers. I said, well, pay them. All you have to do is pay. If you cannot, that will cut in our profits. Duh. I mean, if you want people to flip your burgers, sweep your streets, pay them. Sometimes people have something in their brand where they just can't pay people. And, we know that when people are getting low wages, we know who those people are. They're more likely to be Black people at the bottom of the income distribution. So more of us need to become activists around the issue of pay. We all need to be, if we can be, union members, because a Black man in a union who does the very same job as a Black man who is not in a union is going to make about 1/3 more than he would. So that's and for sisters, it's about 25%. It's a lower number. But when we have someone collectively bargaining for us, we do better. So the world economy is changing. I don't think that China is going to topple us anytime soon. They have their own problems. Right. They have their own issues. But if you go to the African continent, you can see their growing influence. In Ghana, Chinese own one of the TV stations. Now that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But basically, they come in encroaching. Some of the developing countries are so hungry, thirsty for money, not for money, really for development, because you can see the opportunity. You can just open your eyes and see the opportunity, but we don't have the dollars. And part of this, Black America has a lot to account for. I mean, overall America has a lot to account for that. But why aren't we investing in our African countries? Why aren't we doing a lot more for that? Although I will say, caveat, footnote, how come African countries are not investing in us? I mean, it gets on my nerves when I go to an African embassy and the PR company is white, because I know so many sisters who are PR. And Black people can do anything white folks can do, and 99% of the time, to your John Hope Bryant reference, we can do it better. All we have to do is know what the rules are, and then we can do it better. But for some reason, too many African people have drank the white man's Kool-Aid and believe that African Americans are inept. We have a lot of work to do, but I will tell you that it's a different economy.
I agree.
We have to look at the whole issue of the labor shortages. Meanwhile, you got millions of people sitting on the board. They want to come in, and we are getting older. I mean, the thing that's exciting about the African continent is the youngest continent on the globe. The average age on the African continent is under 20 years old.
Wow.
Oh.
So think about that in terms of aging.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to, do the work, take care of our elders? It's a real question. Meanwhile, we don't want to let people in, so we're to our own detriment, very much to our own detriment. I could go on and on, but I won't. But I do want to go back just to say, because Ken, I'm interested in your thoughts about de-dollarization. I mean, you say the dollar is the strongest currency. It is, but for how long? And what you're seeing, because people are resisting the United States in so many other ways, they're also resisting the dollar.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. And I think what I was trying to share is that over time, and I said near future, over time, that's a question I think we've got to be sure we respond to. And I'm talking about the U.S. in terms of the dollar and its dominance. But looking at digital currency and all those other things, I think will have a factor to play in. And the reason I mentioned China in particular regarding Africa, to your point, they are figuring out how to control some of the resources there, and no different than some of the European countries did in their colonization of Africa, right? So we have to keep our eyes on that. I think as a nation, I think it's important to keep our eyes on that. But at the end of the day, the question will become, what do we accept as money going forward? And I think the U.S. it still remains very strong, even though we put up with a lot of craziness in the politics that we see on a day-to-day basis. On the world stage, is still, I would say, pretty strong. Doesn't account for the instances that you've just shared. I think, banking wise, we are actually behind some of the other countries like India, et cetera, in terms of how we deal with money, in terms at the retail level. Let me be clear about that, at the retail level. So we still have some learning to do, but I think what I'm also suggesting is we've got to keep our eyes on the ball long term and figure out how do we remain where we are going forward.
So you know what, we're going to actually, that's a question I have a little bit later. I want to come back because I want to kind of get into that a little bit more. But I wanted to kind of switch gears and talk about this FedNow. So what is FedNow and is it safe?
Yeah, so FedNow, and I served on the Fed of Chicago for 3 years as part of the Community Bankers Advisor Group. FedNow really it's not anything that impacts, I would say, the individual at the retail level. It's predominantly the way that they handle the clearing of checks, I would say, inside of the banking system. So if you're thinking about, is FedNow the equivalent of Zelle or Venmo or Cash App? The answer to you as an individual is no, that's not what FedNow is. I'll try to describe it in very simple terms. So take, for instance, if you brought a check to our bank and it was from another bank, let's just say Chase for lack of a better example, and that check comes through, the check actually goes through the Fed system to clear. And sometimes that could take a couple of days before it's cleared back out and totally saying this check is okay. What FedNow does is allow for a bank, if our bank was participating, and we're not, I think there are about 30 or 40 banks that are in FedNow right now out of the 9,000. That's banks and credit unions. So it's a very small sample that is in there right now. What FedNow will allow for, if that Chase bank check showed up at our bank, it basically would almost be able to instantaneously say that check is clear. So that has some impact to retail individuals, but I would tell you, in general, it is not how it's going to impact how and who you're going to do business with or what platform you decide to use.
Oh, okay.
It's a relatively new, it's a very new instrument. I mean, they've been working on it for a couple of years, but
yes,
it just basically debuted last week. So, right. And as Brother Kelly has said, we have so few banks that are participating in it now, just 40. So, fewer than 10% of all banks are participating, really fewer than 1% are participating in it at this time. But it is the good news about it, it will increase liquidity in the long run. In the very short run, it doesn't, and whether it increases liquidity or not, it doesn't matter to you. Oftentimes, you'll deposit a check and they'll tell you have to wait for the check to clear. It'll take time. But banks will always they're going to always delay you. Correct me if I'm wrong, bro, but you're not going
yes.
You're not going to just come up with money right away. So
this is back to that respect for credit score and the way you handle yourself. They can always delay and wait. That's correct.
So it doesn't have a lot to do, Felicia, with anybody's individual status or the way they do business. But it's worth knowing about. I mean, just to know. Yeah. And also if your banks do participate in FedNow and you get somebody who tells you have to wait 6 days, 8 days for the check to clear, if you have enough sense, you can say, well, are you all in FedNow or not? Because if you are, you got my money.
That's correct. And those are some of those rules of the game that we all need to understand. So, but a great topic. Thanks for bringing this up, Felicia.
Yeah, you know what? Yes, and I'm glad that you guys really stated that, because I was thinking, I was like, okay, I had to download this app. I won't be able to use PayPal anymore or Cash App or whatever. So I'm glad you guys, let us, clued us in on that. But also, what you just said, that's what I'm talking about. That's why I'm so happy you guys are on here, because like this little information going in there and not having to wait, 10 days for my check, just knowing this right here. So thank you guys. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Dr. Malveaux, so there's a lot of theories like circulating around the sinking of the Titanic and the creation of the Federal Reserve. Is there any truth to that?
No, not really. I mean, the Federal Reserve. People crack me up. Some people are very interested in conspiracy theories. There's no magic group of people somewhere. The Fed was created by federal legislation in 13. Thank you. I might be a year or two off, but it was created to try to manage our money supply. That's what the Fed does. It manages our money supply. It manages our money. Its goal is to create monetary stability, which is why basically inflation is the enemy of the Fed, and they will go all the way out to stop inflation, include by raising interest rates in ways that may be deleterious to people in the long run. But no, I mean, I hear these things and I just crack up. And I always say, well, where did you read this? And they can never give me a source, because if they could get, except for some other crazy crackpot who basically is spinning fiction. No, the Fed is not some Machiavellian plot to take over the world. The Fed is a simple federal. Now there are issues about the Fed that one can raise. As I said, we had to wait forever to get a second person. We just have our first Black woman on the Fed after who knows how long. And my theory always, and I would like to see a nurse on the Fed. I don't think you need to have a PhD in economics or an MBA or be a banker to be on the Fed, because what I don't think the Fed gets, if you're dealing with a group of people who have a certain social class. So we start talking about what inflation does. Well, inflation does a very different thing to someone with 6 figures than someone with 5 figures or with 4 figures. And so when we start talking about food prices going up, I mean, Jerome Powell, who's the head of the Fed, he says this so casually, like, well, food prices are going up. Well, if you're a single mom and you got 3 hungry boys and hamburger prices are going up, this is a crisis.
It's a big deal.
Even if you have money, it's still a crisis. There's no way I should be paying $8.99 for for a dozen of eggs.
Eggs are double the price.
Yeah, like I said, every time I go to the grocery store, I'm like, why is it cost this much? It's crazy.
There are the supply chain issues that have been holding over from COVID, but there also is just plain old greediness. I mean, all of this is not supply chain. Some of it is people want to make more money. A lot of people are saying things like they're catching up from COVID. So by that, they mean they're charging more. And if you go to a hotel, the number of surcharges that people throw onto you, you pay for the room, you pay for the tax. Okay, that's all good. I went to a hotel in Vegas and they just put on a $55 entertainment fee.
Wow.
I did not go there for the entertainment. I went there because I had to stay in Vegas and the people put me there. And they paid for room and tax, and I looked at it and I said, $55 for I don't want your entertainment. I entertain myself. And then they tried to explain to me that part of it was the television. Well, doesn't television usually come? But people are thinking of all kind of interesting surcharges to make more money. And some of that, as I said, is just pure unmitigated greed.
Yeah, no doubt. So, Mr. Kelly, so there's a lot of people wondering about the implementation of digital currencies. And with that, the rumors they're rampant. People are saying all types of stuff. Some say that it's similar to China's social credit system. Can you please just elaborate on this and help us just understand the concept of digital currency?
Yeah, well, I would tell you from my view, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get to the level of desire that maybe the audience is pursuing, because being part of the banking system, I'm not one that's out purporting Bitcoin or stablecoin or any of those other things. I mean, we have seen that those have not been stable, if I can use that term loosely, and in some ways have been used to lure individuals into something that it's really not. And so I just can't speak on that, to be honest with you. I would tell you probably need another expert to come and talk about that. What I can speak on is just the monetary system that I know and the banking system that we are participants of. And what I do know is that African Americans have a higher percentage of us unbanked than any other ethnic group.
What's unbanked mean?
You don't have a bank account. It means
that's a problem.
That means 12% of us do not have bank accounts.
That's correct.
Forgive my, but it's a crisis, because if you don't have a bank account, what can you do? What kind of not only liquidity but just access do you have? I was at it sounds like I didn't do anything but fly, and that's partially the truth. But I was in line at this hotel with this sister. They wanted $1,400 from her because she didn't have a credit card. My girl reached into her private bank, if y'all know what I mean, her private bank, and whipped out all these $100 bills. I'm sitting there saying, somebody could hit this old lady upside the head and gone to Disneyland. And then I asked her, because I'm nosy, and I can get away with it by lying and say I'm a journalist. But I said, ma'am, why don't you have, and she told me some long story about how her husband had did something and they couldn't get a bank account, so she just carried cash. I said, ma'am, don't you think that's kind of dangerous? And she said, you know where you see me get money from? I said, yes, she got a switchblade under the other one. So I'm like, okay. But no, it's 12% of us do not have bank accounts. Not only that, we don't have no stuff. By we ain't got no stuff, I mean, no bank account, no saving account, no assets, zero assets.
And why that's so important is that to Dr. Malveaux's point, something as simple as being able to get a credit card, etc. You have no access, but what it really tells a story of is how much are you really spending on financial services? Every time you cash a check, are you spending $3? Probably so. Maybe it's 10. In some cases, there is a percentage of your check if you're cashing it. So if it's $200, they're taking whatever it may be, 5% or whatever that number. That's $10 a check to cash a $200 check. That is extremely expensive, huh?
From what I understand, it's 5 to 8%.
Right.
And in some places, as high as 10%.
Right.
So if your $1,000 check is going to be reduced by as much as $100.
Right. That's correct. That's correct. To put it in very plain terms, or $50 if you're 5%. So that's extremely expensive, and that's per incident. So that's not on I'm gonna pay that and I'm done for the year. So these check cashing places, they really are pariahs in our society. Now I know they provide a service, and there is a need for it. That's why it's $44 billion. Let me say that again. Wow. $44 billion. And in fact, I tell people the check cashing place that's on the same street of my main branch in Detroit, their facility looks better than mine at the bank. And there's a reason for that. They're probably making a lot more profit than we are. And the point I'm trying to make is back to the education piece. We need to talk with our family members, et cetera, and get them in the banking system. Yes, we had challenges in 1865 with the Freedmen's Bank, but I am of the belief today, and working in the system, that all of us can afford to have a bank account and to be bankable. And so let me give you the stats, even in Detroit. In Detroit, that number, Dr. Malveaux, for African Americans is 20%. 1 out of 5 Black people in Detroit do not have a bank account. And then when you look at underbanked, so that's 20% that's unbanked. Get to underbanked, that number is over 50%. That means that people may have a bank account, but they also use alternative financial services. So to your point, and I think you said this earlier, if I didn't mishear you, you said it's a crisis. It really is a crisis, because that cost could be used to subsidize something else, whether that's the eggs you just talked about, Felicia, or the milk, or the clothing for the kids, or whomever, or grandkids, or whomever you care about.
Yeah. So, but how do you pay for stuff if you don't have a bank account? Because a lot of places don't. I mean, like now, if you don't have a smartphone, there are some things you can't even.
You pay with cash. I mean, therein lies the problem. You pay with cash, and I think there are a few fast food places right here in LA where they don't take cash.
Well, yeah, and let me tell you how bad it's gone. So, and what the squeeze has been on people. So to your point, yes, you pay with cash, but the other side of that is employers now don't want to deal with cash. They don't want to even deal with writing checks anymore. So guess what they do? If you don't have a direct deposit where you can ACH those dollars, guess what they will do? Because this has happened to even my son. They will give you a card like a gift card or a debit card and put your money on that. And so that's just not very efficient for managing your money. And so what that does is basically take more money out of the household, because guess what? You're swiping for Walmart, you're swiping at Target, and you're not managing that in a budgetary way that you normally would if you had to kind of take it through your bank account or write a check or manage it differently. So the point I'm trying to make is even employers, in looking at how do they manage their payroll and they're managing their cash, they are actually plowing individuals who are not bankable into these bank type cards that are like gift cards. And so I told my son, I said, tell them to take it back. You do not want to receive your pay by a gift card. It just doesn't make sense. And so we had that change, but he was, young, still in high school. But that is the system that is being pushed upon our people, such that even the employers don't want to deal with checks and or cash anymore.
Yeah. Well, 100%. My son did some internships and they gave him a card. I was like, what happens if you lose the card?
That's the whole point. You're out of that money.
Yeah.
Right?
That's crazy.
And they keep the money. There's so many. This is why we've got to keep up, because there's so many alternate financial instruments that are being developed. And I mean, Kenneth talked earlier about Bitcoin and those. I don't believe in that mess. Now, a lot of people have made a lot of money. A lot of people have lost a lot of money. Well, with those things.
Part of my next question to you.
Well, let me let you let it rip, because actually you had told us we were going to be with you for an hour. So I need to be mindful of my time. I've got something to do. As you know, I'm moving.
Yes, you are a busy woman. I tell you, it's like the older everyone gets, all of you esteemed scholars, it's like you guys get more stuff. It's like I feel like you're probably doing more than you've ever done. I mean, I don't know your whole entire life, but you stay busy. You stay jetting here, there. So
I've always stayed busy. If I stay still, it's not going to be good for somebody. It ain't going to be me.
So in terms of the evolution of currencies, how do you see the advent of the central bank digital currency? Do you think it'll be helpful?
Right now I'm sticking with the old-fashioned thing. I'm with my banker brother here. I mean, there will be all kinds of. I mean, if we go back and look at trade and other things, people have always been inventive about how we transfer money. But I think that this electronic currency, I just find very troubling, especially currency that is not backed by anything, including a regulating authority. For anything anybody has to say about the Fed, the fact is that the Fed regulates the exchange of money. And money is so precious and so many that there has to be a regulating authority. And many do not believe that they should basically have a regulating authority. I forget the name of the young man whose company went bust. You probably know, Kenneth. Remember?
I do. Yeah, he was just on the tube earlier this morning. Oh gosh, I can't think of his name right now. But yeah, he set up the fake system.
Just a little rip-off artist at the end of the day. Young guy with great ideas. Or there was a woman down in Silicon Valley. She going to jail. Same thing. She said, "Oh, she didn't do it on purpose. She took all those people's money. She did it by accident." Well, she can find herself accidentally in a jail cell. But basically, like I said, I'm old school. I don't mind being old school because I'm old. And so, basically, I don't deal with those. I've talked to many young people, and I've talked to young Black people who basically push a Bitcoin-like Black currency. But I have not seen the plans or the backing or one of them asked me to be on his board. I said, "Oh no, my brother, I have this thing called a reputation I like to maintain, and I just don't know which way. You don't know which way is up."
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm gonna stick with the old school method of dealing with currency for the moment, and I'm always open to learn more. But I've read extensively about this stuff, and I know there's some Black owned radio stations that have people who do a show on Bitcoin and alternative currency. That would be told. I tell people all the time, be careful. Yeah. If it sounds too good to be true, guess what? It really is.
Yep. Sam
Well said.
Fried. Sam, that's the guy. That's the guy's name. Sam
Okay.
Bankman.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
Yep.
Little hip-hop artist.
Yes. So Dr. Malveaux, so since we're talking about currencies evolving, I'd like to stay here just for a moment and talk about the U.S. dollar coming off the gold standard. What does that mean, and how did that happen?
It was a Bretton Woods monetary conference. The dollar was tied to gold. There's a limited amount of gold, of course, and basically the Fed and others decided at Bretton Woods. I'm forgetting the dates, but my banker brother knows more about this than I am. I'm absolutely certain. I took money banking back in the day, but decided that they would go onto a flexible currency structure. And again, with all this stuff with money, we're talking about faith and trust. I mean, and so
Right.
that's the thing to keep in mind. It's not a tangible asset, as in, you have $1, you can go get so many, gold coins. It's that basically you're trusting that, and that's why the Fed's role is so important. It's also why the United States is imperiling its world reputation when you start talking about doing things like closing down the government.
Yes.
You talk about closing down the government, you're talking about defaulting on lending that people already thought, we had our money coming. And so basically we've been nicking away at our reputation with our foolishness. And there's nothing wrong with getting off the gold standard, but there is something wrong with undermining the faith of not only the currency, but also the country.
Well said.
Okay. You have like 5 more minutes, Dr. Malveaux, or if you have to go, I understand.
No, I'll give you 5 more minutes.
Okay. All right. We're going to do fast. Okay. So now this is something that you guys actually was talking about, sort of alluded to earlier. So lately there's been a lot of talk about China, Russia, India, and a few other countries working together to create a currency that would compete with or against the US dollar in the sense of being the international currency. What changes would happen if this actually occurred?
Well, de-dollarization has already meant that I think that Kenneth said that 60% of people use a dollar, but that means that 40% do not. And so we know de-dollarization is a function of both politics and economics. What you have to look at with these countries that's coming together, are they really going to come together? Now, and the second thing I would say is, remember the development of the euro. The euro actually has developed to be a stable, quote, alternative currency, but the euro has had its own challenges. Everybody who uses a euro is constrained by a uniform standard of economic growth. So if you're in a recession, let's say Germany, and I'm in an expansion, let's say France, you trading those currencies becomes a little complicated. One is more stable than the other. And so the euro has these very, very narrowly defined basically guidelines, which basically constrain the kind of economic autonomy folks have. So I just saw someone put in the chat BRICS, which is Brazil, I forget, but it's 5. That's another group of folks who are talking about. Gene Smith, yes, thank you, Gene. But this is another group of folks who are talking about developing an alternate currency. There will be high dissatisfaction with the dollar as long as the United States acts like a bunch of fools. There will be high dissatisfaction. And that high dissatisfaction is going to sow seeds that basically continue to influence de-dollarization. But there are so many different ways. It's not like it's just one. It's not like the euro. There are other countries. So China would like their currency to be the one. Is Russia really going? And Russia and China, they have conversations. But anyway, but Russia and China, is Putin actually going to give his control over to China? Do you think? So just playing it out. I believe that our banker friend is actually right. In the long run, the dollar is the currency. But I see chinks in our armor, and I expect that there will be changes. I would sort of say within the next 20 years, if not sooner.
Yeah, that's one of my friends right there watching, James Tyler. He went to Central State. He's giving you a shout out. He's always talking about you. As soon as I said you were coming on the show, I texted him. I was like, Dr. Malveaux is on this Sunday. You better be there.
Well, thanks, James. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Mr. Kelly, from a purely American economic standpoint, how important is it to have the U.S. dollar be the international currency?
I mean, again, I just see it still being there. Barring what you see on CNN or Fox or MSNBC, our military might, we spend more than the next 10 countries on military strength. And while some people probably think, well, it's not related. Believe me, I believe it's related. And you think about, where people are keeping reserves right now, 60% of that is US dollar still in the world. The euro is about 20%. And then you get into Japan and the British, along with Chinese, a small amount. So there's still a lot of faith in it. I do not disagree with Dr. Malveaux. The foolishness we see with the debt ceiling coming up to being a crisis every time is a problem, because banking is about trust. The fact that I will lend you money, so to speak, from our bank is predicated on a 99 percentile range that you have to pay that money back. If 5% of the people don't pay their money back to most institutions, guess what? They will topple. And so again, you have to be 90+% correct on every time you're making that loan. And I'm giving numbers as averages, but the point I'm making is that banks alone can't just go out there and nilly-willy just make loans to people. And the same is true about the faith and trust in the US dollar. And so the reality is I just see that in my lifetime. I don't know that it will change. We'll see it erode around the fringes here and there. But believe you me, war is always politics by another. You know what I mean? We're seeing that with Ukraine and Russia now. He made a mistake. He thought he could go and conquer it pretty quickly. And now he's finding that, guess what? They have guns that shoot back. It's no fun when the rabbit has a gun. And their resiliency in Ukraine. So the point I'm making is that our economy, which is the largest in the world, our military might, it's going to be very, very hard to see it not remain one of the standards, even on the fringes of volatility up and down.
Yeah. So, Dr. Malveaux, I'm going to give you one last question. So I know you have to roll out. How is a particular country's currency actually devalued?
That's a good question. Basically, it's devalued when the world, if you will, decides that the currency isn't worth as much. I was in Zambia. The currency there is the kwacha. When I got to Zambia, the kwacha was 17 kwacha to $1. The day that I landed. Okay, the day that I departed was 18 kwacha to $1, which means that the kwacha became less expensive vis-a-vis the dollar. And often, to Brother Kelly's point, because the dollar is so important, often people are pegging the currencies to the dollar, even though they're not dealing with the dollar. So you pick up the newspaper or whatever, it'll say, well, so many kwachas to the dollar. They may also have the euro, but believe me, they don't have another dozen currencies that they're looking at. They're basically looking at the dollar. So basically, when people believe that the currency has lost value, and again, none of this can you take to the bank. It's trust. It's perception. It's just like the stock market. If you talk about the stock market, the stock market is about as much perception as it is about anything else. So a currency becomes devalued when people use it less or are worried. In Zambia, the issue that was going on was that they had a lot of debt and they were trying to renegotiate their debt with the International Monetary Fund, which gave people less confidence. The word confidence again, trust and confidence, less confidence in the stability of the currency. And so, although one might say, well, just one kwacha per dollar, but if you're talking about a big purchase, that stuff adds up. So the same thing has happened with the United States dollar. I mean, there's a time when I didn't look that up today. I should have. I look it up most days, but there was a time when the euro was about $1.30, $1.40. Now, and then at one point it was 1-to-1. Well, it's not 1-to-1 anymore. The the U.S. dollar vis-a-vis the euro has devalued. Now, if you just stay in your country and mind your business and buy what you want, it almost doesn't matter. If you're traveling internationally, it definitely matters. And there are other situations under which it matters. But if you're in the United States and you say, well, you're not using euros, so why does the euro matter to you? But it would matter if you were. That's almost an unfair comparison because. But if you were buying a car that was manufactured, let's say in Germany,
right,
and then it would make a difference to you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Malveaux. You always put a just a regular person's view on your on your on your information.
That's because I'm a regular person. But this has been a treasure and a delight. Kenneth, it's good to meet you. I hope our paths cross again. And Felicia, always a pleasure to be with HAPI.
Yes,
Love y'all's work. I do have some folks waiting for me, so I am going to book.
Yes, you said the best thing when you were on here last time. You said there's old people and then there's elders. You was like, some people just old. I was like, yes. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. It's great being with y'all, and
Wait,
really appreciate your listening audience.
Wait, no, you're not leaving, Mr. Kelly. Okay, bye, Dr. Malveaux.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Wait. No, I got a couple more questions, and then you're gonna go. Okay.
Okay.
So I wanted to kind of get your opinion about. There was a question I asked Dr. Malveaux about the U.S. dollar becoming an international currency, and what does that mean? So you answered, the question about, where you thought it was, but if it became the international currency, what would that mean for everyone?
I'm sorry. What's the question again?
So I'm sorry. So the U.S. dollar, how did the U.S. dollar become the international currency, and what does that mean? Like everyone, tends to, compare their money to the U.S. dollar. So like,
well, I'm not based in, let me call it the historical fact, whether you look at how it was pegged to oil, et cetera. So I don't know that I can answer that question, but what I can feel some level of confidence in saying is that it's the largest economy in the world, has one of the strongest militaries in the world. And so there is a level of faith and confidence in what is going on with the US dollar is the best way that I could sum it up in very plain terms. And the question, and I think somebody's put it in the chat too, is that, well, if the government just continues to print money, will that erode? I think there is some validity to asking that question. I just don't know where the limit is. You can't say it was $20 trillion in debt. You can't say it's now $30 trillion in debt. Is the question, is it 40, is it 50, or is it 70, or is it 100? I don't know the answer to that. So I put that in context of the things we just talked about a moment ago to say that regardless of even what you see on television regarding what I would call goofiness associated with the politics around the way we manage our budgets, the world still has faith in the U.S. And so that correspondingly is into the dollar. So I just don't know what the right answer is. I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer beyond what I've shared.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. So a few months ago, Silicon Valley Trust and Signature Banks, they closed their doors. Is this a sign of the times, and is this something people should be worried about?
I would tell you, for everyday Americans, I don't think so right now. I think there is a need for calmness. What I do know is that I think it's less than 1% of people have money over the $250,000 limit. So for everyday Americans, if you're under that $250,000 in a particular bank at one particular time, then there's no concern about being uninsured, because that's the issue that came up regarding Silicon Valley Bank, was that they had a high number of individuals who had uninsured deposits, meaning that they had a lot of wealthy accounts at that institution. And many of them were business accounts, just to be clear, not just, quote, rich individuals, but they were business accounts. And what was interesting was that the FDIC, et cetera, and through the administration, they basically stood behind those accounts because they thought it was the right thing to do. And I fundamentally agree with them. If they had not, back to this issue of trust and faith, you probably would have seen a contagion effect on Monday morning after President Biden spoke. That would have been just the opposite of what he was trying to convey. So they made the right decision. And again, it's only 1% of entities or businesses that are above that 250,000. So the response that I would have is, and there are ways to manage that aspect too. If you're above 250, then for most people, they're concerned about, well, everything above 250 at that same bank is of concern. Now, to put it in perspective, I think it's about $7 trillion for that 1% that would fall into that uninsured deposit. But for most everyday Americans, that's not an issue. And so those institutions will remain sound and solid. The FDIC, and I think they implemented, I'm getting to some of the technicalities here, but they implemented the systemic rule associated with that one because they thought it had the contagion effect. And so there are going to be discussions on the Hill, have been discussions in Congress and others about how do we manage this going forward. But for everyday listening audiences, like I'm going to assume you have here, then I would tell you that I have full faith in what the banking system has done. And when I say that, I say banking system, meaning the bankers, along with the regulators associated with it, that they will make the right decisions to be sure that there is no unnecessary harm to our Americans in that regard.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. Kelly. I want you to just talk about a couple minutes about your project, your project for, before I go.
Oh, my book. Okay.
Yeah, your book. Yeah, because it's very important. Because you said something earlier when you were talking about this whole idea of protecting your money, and when you're not here, what does that mean for your family? So can you, where's
well, I will apologize. I typically I come to speak about the issues you want to talk about, but since you brought it up, I will share with your listening audience. I've written a book, and the book is Prepared Before I Let Go. And the focus of the book is I started at a personal level looking at this issue of the wealth gap, 2018-ish or so. And what I realized is, beyond all the stories we've heard, like the story Dr. Malveaux told of the gentleman who was lynched and his, farm was taken away from him. The reality is only 3 out of 10 African Americans have a will in this country. And while the will is not an all-inclusive for passing your possessions, it is an indicative mark in the line or in the sand that says you're doing something about making a decision. And so what I would love to see happen is we increase that will rate in the African-American community. And my view is, I don't care if you don't make but $30,000 a year and you got a 2x2 bedroom shack that you got from someone from years ago and you don't think it's worth anything. My point is, I believe it's worth something. And so what I would suggest to you is that we all, and let me be real clear about this, we all have something to leave as part of our legacy. And what I would also say to you is that don't think about just your possessions. Think about your philosophies. What you believe about religion, what you believe about giving, what you believe about work ethic, what do you believe about family? All of those are things that we just kind of live our lives and hope our kids get it through some form of osmosis. But oftentimes we don't take the time to write it out. So tell your legacy, and I use that word a lot, legacy, in a way that it will be left and clearly understood where you stand on those issues. So that's the latter half of the book. So the first half is about possessions. The latter half is about these philosophies. And let me tell one story that fits in this category. There's a lady named Osceola McCarthy. And from my perspective, she's a hero of the book. And I wrote about her because I think she is a hero. Osceola McCarthy, actually, her occupation was washerwoman. All she did was wash people's clothing in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, all of her life. She never owned a car, But as she was coming to the latter years of her life, she left the University of Southern Mississippi approximately $150,000 for African American students to have scholarship opportunities at the University of Southern Mississippi. It so inspired many others that they contributed to it and fully endowed scholarships for and under her name. This got so much attention that President Clinton at the time acknowledged her and basically pointed her out for her contributions to humanity. At the end of the day, there was a reporter who asked her, didn't you want to do something for yourself with that money, with the mic in her face? And she just looked at the reporter and said, I just did. The point I'm making is, here's a lady never owned a car, washed people's clothing all of her life, but made a contribution to society in a way that she's going to educate kids that will go into perpetuity or as long as that university and that scholarship foundation exist, which should be into perpetuity, barring some catastrophic event. But the point I'm making is, you can make a decision. Each of us can make a decision to make a difference in, I would call it, planting trees for the shade we will never see. And so I even did that, and I wrote about it in my book. I share this story, Felicia. Before my kids' own college education was taken care of, meaning fully funded, we actually had endowed scholarships for students from my hometown. I wanted kids to have the opportunity to experience what I've experienced as an engineer. So I put forth money to establish that endowment before I had my own kids' college education funded. The point I'm making is, that was a conscious choice. I write about it in the book because I'm hopeful it will inspire someone else. And again, let me be clear. You don't have to be rich to do this. You could set it up to where it's only $500 a year to set it up, or $1,000 a year to contribute to some kid from your high school or your community or wherever you have an allegiance to be sure they see that you walk through those doors and they can walk through those doors right behind you. And so let me take it one step further and then I'll close it out. So I did that, wrote the book, first half possessions, second half philosophies. But then I realized, what good does it do if they don't have a tool to utilize it? So we created a technology platform. It's called My Legacy Items. You can go to mylegacyitems.com right now. And for really free, you can test run the information into creating a will, healthcare directive, and power of attorney in My Legacy Items. The way we set it up, you only have to pay if you're going to use it and print it out and take it to have it notarized so it becomes an effective document. But the point I'm making is, we did originally set it up so you pay to get in. And I realized, well, that's not really helping people to understand what you need to do to create your will and how easy it is to do that. So we set it up so you only pay when you have to print and then get it done. So I would encourage everyone that's listening to me, mylegacyitems.com. You can go and do it right now. If you own property, you can put that address in there. If that house is in Zillow, it'll show you the value of it. And let me give you one other reason why these things are important. So in the midst of me writing the book, what I realized is, when my kids turned 18, they are effectively legal adults. And what that means is, if they are incapacitated, whether that's a car accident or an aneurysm or a stroke or whatever the situation may be, just because I'm daddy and I may help pay for them to go to college, doesn't mean I have the authority to make a decision on their behalf from a medical perspective. And so what I realize is, everyone at the age of 18 really needs to have what we call a living will or a healthcare directive done. And so, again, that was my learning in this whole process. But my point is, don't assume when you talk will, healthcare directive, power of attorney, you're thinking someone 65 and over. I will tell you what I learned is, even at 18, they need to have made that declaration, which means what? We have to have these conversations with young people and change our culture about this. And because the taboo side, and I'll close out here, the taboo side of this is, we don't want to deal with our own mortality. Because guess what? It's easier to make a decision not to. And that's how we deal with it, by not making a decision. But the reality is, as I talk about in the book, I interviewed funeral home directors and pastors, and you wouldn't believe, and you may have experienced some of the turmoil that takes place behind the scenes when someone is lost and those affairs haven't been looked at. So in my book, I write about Prince, I write about James Brown, I write about everybody but Aretha Franklin, because I'm a banker in Detroit, and I didn't want anyone to make an assumption that I was writing about something that I knew regarding her business. But again, Prince, James Brown, our hero, John Singleton, who wrote and produced Boys in the Hood, Stuart Scott, who revolutionized ESPN with the Booyah, all of those had very unique circumstances. And so I want to stop here and say thank you, Felicia, for giving me a chance to share this with your audience.
Yeah, you know what? Thank you, thank you, Mr. Kelly, for coming on. You every time we call, you just like you right there. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, my pleasure. Glad to be here. I believe in what you all are doing, and like I said, it's enough reason for me to spend a Sunday afternoon or evening to have this conversation with you.
Yes. And family, go to mylegacyitems.com and get your stuff together. It's uncomfortable conversations, but it's more uncomfortable if something happens and there's no plan. So family.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Right. Thank you. And we'll be in touch.
Sounds great. Call anytime.
All right.
All right. Y'all take care. Bye now. Thanks for being here, audience. Take care.
All right. Peace. Okay, fam. So listen, thank you for everyone who gave us the super chats. I saw Jay Mar Milton, who will be performing. And let me just get this up because this is going to be, we were talking a lot about economics tonight, but the reality is that, they gave really good stories on, of us, like if we don't know, our history and things like that. But this is, we're giving you guys this opportunity to learn even more of your history by coming with us to Egypt, because we will, it's just, like the name of this trip this year is called Discovering the Origins of Economics in Egypt with HAPI. And so right here, fam. So a lot of what, of what we discussed tonight all had economic roots. And if you travel with us, and like I said, Taki has had this ICAT tours for about 25 years now. And he's been taking a lot of folks to Egypt and sharing this knowledge. But this particular event is even more special because we are literally tracing our economic roots. 10 days. We will have Dr. Georgina Falou will be in the house. We have J. Mar Milton will be performing. We also will have economic classes with Dr. David Anderson. And we are going to have the first HAPI dinner gala in Egypt. So we're going to have time, to shake your leg a little bit, get dressed up, but also learn some very important information. When you're out here in these streets, doing all types of things and and working and having your business and stuff, it's good to be rooted in something and to know why it is that you're succeeding and how to keep succeeding. And so it comes back to history. So we're giving you guys this opportunity to learn that history. It's going to be fun. I've gone to Egypt several times, but this one is going to be really exciting because of the people that are coming with us, and also, how could I forget, Mfudishi Juhutimis will be one of our tour guides, and he always makes it. I mean, I tell you, it's like you're transported in time when he talks because he has just a wealth of information. So family, if you can make it happen, you can go to icattours.com, at least put down your deposit, and you have, like 7 months to pay. And, just like the woman that that Mr. Kelly talked about, who was just putting away a little money, every week, you can do that with this trip. We have all types of different payment plans. You tell us what works for you and we'll make it happen. So right there, HAPI 2024 Tour to Egypt. Discover the origins of economics in Egypt with HAPI. And it is February 16th to the 25th. It is going to be an exciting time. And also, family, two more things. The clearance sale, I'm telling you, go on to hapifilm.com, okay? Get you some Happy gear. I have my Nubia shirt on. Infudishi had his on when he came onto the show a couple weeks ago. But if you just head over to hapifilm.com, you can get get your gear. But then also, if you get some stuff today, okay, we're gonna throw a little something extra in there. So I'm just saying, family, right there, hapifilm.com. And also, while you're there, make sure you sign up for the newsletter, because we always have things going on. And, like social media is sometimes a little shady. And so we like to be able to just email people and tell them, what we need to, get to them. So make sure you're signed up for that. Let me see. I think that is everything. And if you have not seen HAPI, the film, okay, this is the HAPI Talks, but if you haven't seen the film, please, family, make sure you can also, it's on sale. You can stream it or you can download it along with our other films. We have The Tekken, The Untold Story. Nubia, The Untold Story, The Tekken, and we have the One Africa Conference that we had in Detroit. We also have that where you can rent it or you can stream it. So there it is, family. I want to just thank you so much. Charles, you're taking the words right out my mouth. Charles Trott right there. Yes. Thank you. As much, as you guys say that we, are giving you guys love, we feel the love, and it's a mutual thing, which is nice. Yes. And thank you, Jean. Jean is always supporting us. Thank you. All right, fam. I think that is it until the next, installment of HAPI Talks. Peace.
I don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority. Honestly,
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?